Growing up, I always knew I was second best. My name is Isabella, though everyone calls me Bella, and I'm the younger daughter in what appeared to be your typical middle-class family. My sister Catherine, Katie for short, was the golden child. 3 years older than me, she was blessed with naturally blonde hair that seemed to catch the sunlight just right in every photo. Mom never missed an opportunity to capture her perfect angel for the family album or social media. I wasn't ugly by any means. I had my own kind of pretty, dark hair, hazel eyes, and what my aunt called an interesting face. But in our house, interesting wasn't enough. Katie was the standard, and I was, well, just there. The favoritism wasn't subtle. When Katie needed new clothes, we'd spend entire weekends at the mall. When I needed something? We'll see next month, sweetie. Katie got the bigger bedroom because she needed space for her studying. She got a car for her 16th birthday. I got a watch for mine, not even a particularly nice one. The real kicker came during our respective high school graduations. When Katie graduated, our parents threw this massive party. Dad proudly announced they'd be paying for her college education. She was going to study to become a bank manager, following in his footsteps. Everyone toasted to her bright future. 3 years later, I graduated with even better grades than Katie had. I still remember sitting at our kitchen table, college acceptance letters spread out in front of me, watching my parents exchange uncomfortable glances. "Honey," Mom started, not quite meeting my eyes, "we just don't have the money for college right now. The market's been tough, and with Katie's tuition." Dad jumped in, "Maybe you could work for a year or two, save up some money?" I sat there, stunned into silence. The same parents who had just bought Katie a new laptop for college were telling me they couldn't afford my education. That night, I cried myself to sleep, but it was the last time I would cry over their favoritism. The next morning, I started job hunting. Within a month, I landed a position as a maid at the Grand Plaza Hotel, the fanciest hotel in our city. While Katie moved back home after college graduation, to save money, she said, I moved into a tiny studio apartment across town. Living on my own was tough at first, but it beat staying at home watching Katie bask in our parents' endless attention. My apartment might have been basic, but it was mine. Every night when I came home exhausted from work, I felt a sense of pride knowing I was making it on my own. I threw myself into my work at the Grand Plaza Hotel. While some of the other maids complained about the demanding guests and endless rooms to clean, I saw every task as an opportunity to learn the hotel business from the ground up. "Bella, you're the only one who consistently gets perfect room inspection scores," Mrs. Rodriguez, the head housekeeper, told me after just 3 months. "How do you do it?" "I just try to think about what I'd want if I were staying here," I replied, straightening my uniform. Within 6 months, I was promoted to head maid. That's when I first met him, James Richardson, the guest in room 742. He was probably in his mid-40s, distinguished looking, with salt and pepper hair and expensive suits. I noticed him watching me one morning while I was supervising the cleaning of the 7th floor. "Miss," he called out, "could I have a word?" What started as a simple request about extra towels turned into a 15-minute conversation about hotel operations. The next day, he happened to run into me again. And the next. And the next. "Join me for dinner tonight," he suggested casually on his 5th day at the hotel. "I know a lovely restaurant downtown." I straightened my shoulders and looked him directly in the eye. "Mr. Richardson, I appreciate the invitation, but I need to be clear, if you're looking for a temporary arrangement during your stay, I'm not interested." Instead of being offended, he laughed. "Fair enough. But my invitation stands, just dinner, nothing more." I declined politely but firmly. He continued to be friendly, but respectful, for the remainder of his 3-week stay. The day he checked out, he left me a business card with his number. I tucked it away and thought that would be the end of it. 2 weeks later, everything started changing. First, I was called to the hotel manager's office and offered a position at the front desk, a significant promotion. Before I could get used to my new role, I was promoted to head of the registration team. A few weeks after that, I became assistant manager of the front office. Within 2 months of Mr. Richardson's departure, I found myself as the manager of the entire front office. The speed of my advancement made my head spin. While I knew I was good at my job, this seemed almost too good to be true. The whispers started soon after. "She must be sleeping with Mr. Blackwood," I overheard one of the receptionists telling another, referring to our hotel owner. "Did you see how fast she moved up? Nobody gets promoted that quickly without, you know." I tried to ignore the gossip, but it stung. I'd worked hard for every promotion, stayed late, learned every aspect of the operation. Yet people assumed I'd slept my way to the top. The truth was, I'd barely even met Mr. Blackwood, let alone had an affair with him. One Monday morning, Mr. Blackwood's secretary called to schedule a meeting. My stomach churned. These unexpected meetings usually meant trouble. I knocked on his office door precisely at 2 p.m. "Come in, Bella," he called out. "Please, have a seat." Mr. Blackwood was a tall man in his 60s, with kind eyes that always seemed to be evaluating something. He shuffled some papers on his desk before looking up at me. "You've done exceptional work here," he began. "But there's something we need to discuss. Your position as front office manager typically requires a college degree in hospitality management or a related field." My heart sank. Here it was, they'd finally realized I wasn't qualified for the job. "I think it's time for you to go to college, Bella." I blinked, confused. "I'm sorry?" "The hotel will work with your schedule, of course. We want you to get your degree while maintaining your position here." My mind was spinning. This wasn't at all what I'd expected. "I don't know what to say," I stammered. "Thank you, but why?" He smiled, reaching into his desk drawer. "You know, I don't often take advice about personnel decisions from outside sources, but in your case, a good friend insisted I pay attention." He pulled out a business card and slid it across the desk. "If you're curious about why your career has taken such an interesting trajectory lately, give this number a call." I picked up the card, and my breath caught. It was the same number Mr. Richardson had given me months ago. That evening, sitting in my apartment, I stared at the card for a full hour before finally picking up my phone. My hands were shaking as I dialed. "I was wondering when you'd call," that familiar voice answered on the second ring. You're friends with Mr. Blackwood?" I managed to ask. James chuckled. "We've known each other for 30 years. When I spot talent, he trusts my judgment. So all these promotions were entirely earned," he cut in firmly. "I simply suggested he pay attention to your potential. Everything you achieved, you did on your own merit." We talked for hours that night. He explained how he'd watched me work during his stay, impressed by my attention to detail and natural leadership abilities. He'd seen something in me that reminded him of himself when he was younger, that drive to prove yourself against all odds. 2 days later, we had dinner at that same restaurant he'd first invited me to months ago. This time, I said yes. I enrolled in college the following week, majoring in hotel and restaurant management. James supported me every step of the way, not just emotionally but practically, helping me study, sharing his business experience, teaching me things no textbook could cover. Our relationship deepened naturally. There was no grand romantic gesture, no dramatic moment when everything changed. We simply grew closer day by day, until being together felt as natural as breathing. "Move in with me," he said one evening, 6 months after that first phone call. We were sitting on his penthouse balcony, looking out over the city lights. A month later, we were married in a small but elegant ceremony, and I moved from my tiny studio into his luxurious penthouse apartment. "Girl, you hit the jackpot," my friend Sarah exclaimed over coffee one afternoon. "Successful, handsome, and actually nice? Those kinds of men aren't supposed to exist." I laughed, but she wasn't wrong. James was everything I could have hoped for in a husband. He supported my education, celebrated my career achievements, and made me feel valued, something I'd never experienced growing up. My newfound happiness made family gatherings interesting, to say the least. Katie, who had always been the star of the show, was struggling to keep a man interested for more than a few weeks. Her career at the bank was going well, she'd made it to assistant manager, but her personal life was a mess. I'd catch her staring at James and me during holiday dinners, her eyes filled with barely concealed envy. The same sister who used to ignore me unless she needed something now couldn't stop watching my every move. "Did you see how Katie was looking at your ring all through Christmas dinner?" James asked me afterward. I thought she was going to drill a hole through it with her eyes. "She's always been used to having the best of everything," I sighed. "I don't think she knows how to handle not being the center of attention anymore." The situation got more awkward when my parents started their campaign to get Katie married off. Mom would corner me at every family gathering. "Sweetie," she'd say in that syrupy voice she used when she wanted something, "surely James must have some nice friends? Single ones? Katie's not getting any younger, you know." Dad was more direct. "Your sister deserves someone successful, like James. You should help her out, it's what family does." The irony wasn't lost on me. The same parents who couldn't find money for my education were now trying to use my connections to benefit their favorite daughter. "James must know lots of eligible businessmen," Katie herself finally said one day, cornering me in the kitchen during Easter dinner. "Why haven't you introduced me to any of them?" I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The perfect blonde hair was still there, but her eyes held a desperate edge I'd never seen before. "Maybe because I don't want to be responsible for someone else's love life," I replied carefully. "Besides, relationships aren't about just finding someone wealthy, Katie." "Easy for you to say," she snapped. "You already got the rich husband." I walked away from that conversation knowing I'd made the right choice to keep my distance. Something about Katie's attitude toward finding a wealthy man made me uncomfortable. It felt less like she wanted love and more like she was hunting for a prize. I thought I'd finally found my happily ever after. The next 2 years seemed to prove me right, at least on the surface. But slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, things began to change. It started with small things. James began coming home later and later from work. His business trips, which used to be occasional, became more frequent. At first, I made excuses for him in my head. He was busy, the company needed him, this was just a temporary phase. "Sorry, darling, emergency board meeting," he'd text, missing another dinner I'd prepared. "This trip might take 2 weeks instead of 1, he'd say, barely looking up from his phone. Our home felt emptier with each passing day. The sound of my heels echoing through our penthouse apartment became a lonely reminder of how much time I spent there alone. Finally, one evening, I decided enough was enough. I waited up for him, determined to have a real conversation about what was happening to us. "James, we need to talk," I said when he walked in at 11 p.m. He looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, cold, distant, almost annoyed. "Yes, we do." What happened next felt like a scene from someone else's life, not mine. "I want a divorce," he said flatly, as if he were discussing the weather. "I don't love you anymore." Actually, I'm not sure I ever did. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "What?" "James, if something's wrong, we can work on it." "There's nothing to work on, Bella. It's over. My lawyer will be in touch." Everything moved at warp speed after that. Within days, I was served divorce papers. The prenuptial agreement I'd signed, the one I'd thought was just a formality, meant I had no claim to anything. Not the apartment, not his money, not even the furniture we'd picked out together. In a daze, I packed my clothes and personal items into 3 suitcases. With nowhere else to go, I called my parents. "Mom, Dad, I need to stay with you for a little while," I said, trying to keep my voice from breaking. "Just until I figure things out." The silence on the other end should have told me everything. "Oh, honey," Mom's voice dripped with false sympathy, "we're in the middle of renovations right now. The guest room is completely torn apart." "I could sleep on the couch," I suggested. "Well, you see, Dad jumped in, "We're having the living room painted too. And you know how small this house is." They had excuse after excuse, each one more transparent than the last. What hurt most was the barely concealed satisfaction in their voices. They were actually happy about my fall from grace. I found a small apartment across town and tried to throw myself into my work. But suddenly, nothing was going right there either. Every report I submitted came back with corrections. Every decision I made was questioned. Finally, Mr. Blackwood called me into his office. The same man who had championed my career now couldn't quite meet my eyes. "Bella," he said, shuffling papers on his desk, "perhaps it would be best if you considered other opportunities. We'd be happy to provide a reference." Depression hit me hard after losing everything. For a month, I barely left my bed. The silence from my family was deafening, not a single call, not even a text to check if I was alive. Thank God for Sarah. "Get up," she demanded one morning, barging into my apartment with coffee and bagels. "This isn't the Bella I know." "The Bella you knew had a life," I mumbled into my pillow. "No," she yanked my curtains open, "the Bella I know is a fighter. The one who started as a maid and worked her way up to management. The one who put herself through college while working full-time. That Bella's still in there somewhere." Thank goodness I'd always been careful with money. Even with the prenup, I had my own savings from years of working and living below my means. James had taught me one useful thing, at least, always have a backup plan. One sleepless night, staring at my ceiling, it hit me. I knew the hotel business inside and out. I'd done every job, from cleaning toilets to managing the front office. I knew what worked, what didn't, and most importantly, what guests really wanted. "I'm going to open my own hotel," I told Sarah over breakfast the next morning. She nearly choked on her coffee. "That's ambitious." "I've got savings for startup costs, but I'll need investors," I said, already making lists on my phone. "And I know exactly what kind of hotel I want to create." I threw myself into research, created a detailed business plan, and started networking. At a charity event for emerging entrepreneurs, I met two investors who loved my vision for a boutique hotel that would combine luxury with personal attention. The first year was brutal. I worked reception during the day, did paperwork at night, and filled in for every position when needed. Once, I spent 3 days doing housekeeping when my maid got the flu. But every exhausting moment felt different than before. This time, I was building something for myself. Slowly but surely, the hotel began to succeed. Word spread about our personalized service and attention to detail. By year 3, we were turning a profit. By year 5, I had paid back my investors in full, and the hotel was entirely mine. During all this time, my family remained silent. They'd cut me out of their lives so completely, it was as if I'd never existed. No more holiday invitations, no family gatherings, nothing. At first, it hurt, but gradually, I realized it was a blessing. Their absence meant no more comparisons, no more subtle put-downs, no more feeling like I wasn't enough. I did occasionally check Katie's social media, old habits die hard, I guess. That's how I learned she'd finally found her rich man and had a baby. Her posts were full of designer baby clothes and exotic vacations. She seemed to have everything she'd always wanted. 2 years passed like a whirlwind. The hotel wasn't just successful, it had become the city's go-to destination for travelers seeking luxury with a personal touch. Travel bloggers regularly featured us in their content, praising our unique approach to hospitality. "We should do something to give back to the community," I told my management team one morning. "Something big." That's how the idea for our first charity gala was born. We transformed the hotel's grand ballroom into a glittering wonderland, invited local celebrities, business leaders, and press. The event aimed to raise money for educational scholarships for underprivileged students, fitting, given my own history with education. The gala was a massive success. Local TV stations covered it, online news sites ran features about the rags to riches story of the hotel's owner, and suddenly, I found myself in the spotlight. 3 days later, my front desk manager called my office. "Ms. Bennett, your parents are in the lobby. They're quite insistent about seeing you. They say they won't leave until you come down." I took a deep breath, straightened my suit jacket, and headed to the lobby. There they were, Mom and Dad, looking older but just as entitled as ever. "Bella," Mom rushed forward for a hug I deftly avoided. "Why are you here?" I asked coldly. "Can't parents want to reconnect with their daughter?" Dad tried to sound hurt. "We've seen how successful you've become. We're so proud." "Proud?" I laughed bitterly. "You weren't proud when I needed a place to stay after my divorce. You weren't proud during the 7 years you didn't bother to call." "Water under the bridge," Mom waved her hand dismissively. "Family should stick together in hard times. Speaking of which," her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, "Katie's going through such a difficult period. Her boyfriend left her, and now she's all alone with the baby. He won't pay any child support. Surely you could help your sister out." Perhaps it was morbid curiosity, or maybe just a desire for closure, but something made me ask, "How exactly do you expect me to help Katie?" Mom's eyes lit up, thinking she'd found an opening. "You could talk to her baby's father. Make him understand he needs to support his child." I couldn't help but laugh. "And why would this man listen to me? I don't even know him." "Don't be coy, Bella," Dad snapped. "Of course you know James. He was your husband, after all." The world stopped spinning for a moment. The pieces of the puzzle suddenly clicked into place with sickening clarity. My sister's mysterious rich boyfriend. My parents' sudden distance. The timing of my career's collapse. "James?" I whispered. "Katie and James?" "Well, it's not like it was planned," Mom said defensively. "These things just happen." "These things just happen?" My voice rose. "My husband and my sister? And you knew? You knew all this time?" "Katie and James fell in love," Dad said, as if that explained everything. "We couldn't very well take sides." "Couldn't take sides?" I was nearly screaming now. "You absolutely took sides. You cut me out of your lives. You refused to help me when I had nowhere to go. And now you have the audacity to come here and ask for my help." "Don't be so dramatic," Mom huffed. "Everything worked out for the best. Look at you, you have your own hotel now. So James did the right thing, having you fired from your old job. Katie thought it would be too awkward having you work there." I stared at my parents, these people who had raised me, who were supposed to love and protect me. In that moment, I saw them clearly for the first time, not as the parents who had favored Katie, but as willing accomplices in destroying my life. "Get out," I said quietly. "Now, Bella," Mom started. "Get out," I screamed. "Security." 2 of my security guards appeared instantly. "These people are banned from the premises," I told them, my voice shaking with rage. "They are never to be allowed in this hotel again, under any circumstances. Escort them out." "You ungrateful little," Dad began, but the guards were already moving them toward the door. "You'll regret this," Mom shouted. "Family is all you have." "No," I called after them. "Family is supposed to love you, support you, protect you. You're not family. You're just people who happened to raise me." That was the last time I spoke to my parents. Through mutual friends and social media, I've heard snippets of what happened after. Katie and James's relationship imploded spectacularly. She posts daily rants about him on social media, calling him every name in the book, while he threatens her with lawsuits for defamation. My parents lost most of their retirement savings in a bad investment and had to downsize their house. Meanwhile, my life has taken a wonderful turn. 6 months ago, I met Michael at a hotel industry conference. He's kind, successful in his own right, and most importantly, he loves me for who I am, not what I can give him. We're getting married next spring. Sometimes, late at night, I scroll through Katie's angry social media posts about James, watching their dirty laundry being aired for all to see. I find myself laughing at the cosmic justice of it all. My sister, who thought she'd won it all by stealing my husband, now posts daily sob stories about being a single mom. James, who thought he'd upgraded to the better sister, is watching his reputation get dragged through the mud. And me? The sister they thought they'd destroyed? I'm thriving. My hotel is expanding to a second location next year. Michael and I are planning our future together. And most importantly, I'm finally free from the toxic family that never really loved me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even, it's living well and watching karma do its work from a safe distance, preferably with a glass of champagne in hand.